All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the fourth edition of the Tales from the Road podcast. I'm glad I'm back. Happy to be doing it. This is Pierce, your boy from Tales from the Road. I'm very happy to be making this happen. And I'm a big fan of these podcasts. So today I'm calling it Social Life on the Road. So for those of you that don't know, I've been a digital nomad for almost 11 months. And I get a lot of questions about how I function, what my social life is like, really like what's going on in my life and how I make it work. I think a lot of people think it's really easy. Obviously, it's a pretty fun lifestyle. It's definitely an interesting lifestyle to have, but there are some challenges, some systemic challenges, some challenges that you get psychologically, challenges monetarily. There's lots of different things going on. So I just want to dedicate this podcast to answering your guys' questions specifically. If you guys have questions, please ask me. If you're curious about maybe becoming a digital nomad or something along those lines, changing your office job and, wondering what it's like to really live remotely, to really like take into all the things that are into consideration, what we do as a digital nomad, how you make it happen, how the lifestyle affects you as a person. That's what this podcast is about. So, of course, feel free to comment. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, this is always a great time to subscribe to the channel. You can always like the video. You can share it with your friends. I just did a series about Uzbekistan and I'm very, very proud of it. I made some really great content there, from Samarkand to Bukhara to Tashkent and everywhere in between. We've got one more video left on the series, which I'm super excited to share. It's going to be a food tour of Tashkent. Definitely going to want to check that one out. So without further ado, let's talk about social life on the road. So the first question I always get is, are you lonely? So I've been traveling like this for 11 months, as I just said. Really, I've been living abroad for almost 5 years, and I haven't lived more than, let's call it 10 months in one place since I was 21, and now I am 26. So that's almost 5 years, like really on the road. I don't own any things. I live basically as minimally as a person could hope to live. I've got one backpack full of clothes, one backpack full of electronics and camera gear, and I've got my phone and my wallet. And sometimes I don't even have keys. Sometimes I'm so homeless that I have no keys. So the question is, do you get lonely? So I think it's first, probably the best thing to do is, what do you quantify as lonely? For me, I think being lonely is that feeling you get when you're alone and there's no one you can necessarily share things with. So if we're taking that definition, for me, I don't really get lonely. Sometimes when I think back to my life back in the United States, especially with my friends, I was in university in a college town living with lots of cool people. And of course, back home living with my family, I was never necessarily lonely with having people around me, but I was lonely in different ways. Maybe you didn't have the right people around you. Maybe you didn't have the right people to share things with. Maybe you didn't have the space that you needed to feel properly lonelier. It's kind of a weird thing to think about. So for me, like for example, when I was living in Vietnam, I always say it's my happiest 10 months of my life. And that's like a pretty big statement, but every day in Vietnam, I was very far away from my friends and family in the United States, but not one day did I feel lonely. I felt an extreme sense of pride and happiness of my situation, of finally being economically free and able to kind of live the lifestyle that I really wanted to live. I also made incredible friends in Vietnam, just the coolest people. And because there was such great people there, I think that there was travelers who always were down to hang out and to meet up with each other and to, explore new things. And it was really the easiest place to live. Sometimes it was the perfect mix between having all the friends and all the social life you could ask for without necessarily feeling like you needed to do that every day. Now, I have to say the digital nomad lifestyle that I'm doing now is quite different, because if you're not in a place for, let's say, more than a couple months, it's really hard to develop any sort of lasting or deep connections with people. I'm going to get into the negative sides of being a digital nomad later in the podcast, but you do get a bit lonely, a bit isolated, and you do get a bit some like disoriented in a way. You're not so connected, you're not grounded. And I think this is the main reason why I've decided to stay in Belgrade for the summer. So I got here in June and I'm going to stay here until mid-August, was that I was feeling a little bit disconnected from what normal reality was, what normal relationships were, and what it meant to really be in some sort of social group. Now, I meet great people everywhere I travel, but you definitely don't make those deep connections when you only have 4 weeks to get to know somebody, or you only meet the same person a couple times. So that is definitely a way to be lonely. The secondary part is just moving abroad in general is a lonely thing. So especially if you travel solo, right? This is the one thing people always are crazy about. And I think this might be the reason why people often say, Pierce, you're very brave. What you're doing is brave. I can't imagine doing that myself. And for me, I always wonder, like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything particularly brave, but maybe it's the social aspect, the taking a leap of faith and hoping everything is going to be okay. I'm going to go out into the world. I'm going to meet some people. I'm going to basically remove myself from everything I know, and I'm just going to hope it goes well for me. I guess that could be considered brave. I don't particularly think it's brave. It might be commendable. I think commendable is a nice word for that. But yeah, so back to the loneliness part. I think loneliness is an interesting thing, because I think people think it's a lot more uncomfortable than it is. And I think we attribute loneliness to this incredibly negative stereotype, when I think when you're truly lonely or you're truly by yourself solo, you really get to reflect on not only what relationships you want with people, but also who you are and what you have to bring to the table, as far as who you are as a person. I think the person I was when I was 21 before I left the United States to the person that I am today are two totally different people. And it's a really different ball of wax. So I feel much more social, much more open, much more willing to try new things, much more intensely vivacious about life. Whereas before, I think since you're surrounded by the people that you know, the people to keep you safe, the people to keep you warm and to keep you comfortable, I think for me that's it's kind of a negative, and it holds you back, and it's good to get out of your comfort zone. So to wrap up the being lonely thing, I think you do get lonely. You have some bad days, but it's totally on you to manage your friendships while you're abroad and while you're traveling. Keep the people that are close to you close, and to not hold on, especially for me, to the people that weigh you down or the people that didn't really add a lot of value to your life. And so now I've whittled it down to the best people that I've got. If I'm in contact with you, it's because I legitimately appreciate your friendship, and you've been a good person to me, and you mean a lot to me, and I will host you wherever I am, and I hope to come visit you wherever you are. And everyone else kind of like falls by the wayside, which, my dad always said to me one day. He said, son, you're going to wake up when you're 25 and you're going to realize that you have a lot less friends than when you started. And I always thought that was ridiculous, because I was in this huge network, this huge fraternity network, and all my friends from high school. And it is very true. There's only a few good people that you really do keep in contact with. So the thing is, if you really want to, you can keep in contact with those people. And so you really are never lonely. I think you can sometimes be bored by being alone a lot, but it really depends how boring of a person you are. So for me, I always know how to kind of keep myself entertained. And I don't often get lonely. I don't often get bored. And when I do, I always push myself out of my comfort zone, go to a museum, go try something new, go have a new experience. And there's so many crazy experiences waiting there for you that there's no time to be lonely. That's my main point. So, secondary question I often get is, do you get homesick? It's a weird question, and it's one I don't really know how to answer. For me, I think that I don't particularly get homesick. I sometimes have a feeling that I miss my family, or I'm sad when I'm not there for certain events, friends' weddings, friends' birthdays. Um, but that being said, I really, really enjoy my lifestyle, and I think it's cool. It depends. Like, I don't really miss anything particularly about the US besides the people. So for me, I'm not really attached to my hometown, and I'm not particularly attached to lots of things in the United States. So for me, that's not particularly that hard. But of course, I miss the people. And when I'm with the people that I really do care about, it is very hard to leave. And it's very nice to, be around your mother and your father and your brothers and sisters and all those people. It really is a nice thing that I don't get that often. So you do trade with this lifestyle, partly your time of exploration for your time with your family and your friends. And for me, that's a good trade-off. But as I get older, and realizing that some of these people aren't going to be around forever, it's definitely a thing to think about. So for me, I do get homesick, and when I do, I call my family and I try to keep good conversations and stuff like that. And that's about as good as you can do. I try to go home at least once a year, if not twice. And for me, that's enough to kind of rekindle my relationship with everybody and kind of keep everything afloat. And beyond that, sorry, I'm just checking the chat here. All right, good. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to drop a question into the chat, and I'm happy to answer it at the end of this podcast. This is both a podcast for y'all to listen to, but also to, if you're curious about the digital nomad lifestyle, I would love to help people kind of get started on that journey, because this has been really the most transformative few years of my life so far. And that's a big statement. So yeah, homesick, not so much. All right, well, the next question is, how do you connect with your family? How do you stay in touch with people? What are the best ways to do that? For me, it's pretty simple. You just have to be open to making it happen. A lot of people often aren't open for making it happen. They're not very connected with their family unless they see them. And you have to recalibrate how you interact with your people. So for me, it's like I use WhatsApp. So, I always send pictures to my parents. I send voice messages to my dad. Every week I call them. I'm not waiting for them to call me. And I think for me, like, every relationship is a two-way street. So if you're not calling them and expecting them to call you, I think that is a bad way to go about it. And secondarily, if they're calling you and you're feeling overwhelmed, I know I have some friends whose parents call them legitimately multiple times per day. Shout out to the Turks. If you are one of those people, then you need to tell your parents to respect your boundaries a little bit. And it's the best way if you just like find something that works for you. So for me, it's like talking to my family and my good friends, my family at least every week. And then my good friends, hop on a call now and again, send some text messages, stay connected, send some Snapchats, the usual. But you realize you're not missing necessarily as much as you think you are. You can certainly miss a lot of things, I think, if you're not there. But if you really stay in contact with people and you let them know how you're feeling, and you share, you actually share and are open with people, I think staying connected with your family and your friends is not that hard. It just takes a little bit of adjustment, a little bit of effort, and it's something pretty much anybody can do. All right. So the next thing is how I changed living abroad and what living abroad kind of does to your mindset. And so the first thing that I can really say is that it made me so much more extroverted and so much more open to new things. I remember being a kid back in the day, and you could, like a mailman would come to the door, or a pizza guy or someone. And I was just so scared of strangers. I just was not one of those kids that was very open to new experiences. I only liked hanging out with the people that I knew. If I went to a party, I would always be, the kid that would be with his buddies, but never really meeting any new people. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but I always knew that I could be more than that. When I went to college, I moved away. So you have to get out of that initial bubble of the people that you know. And it was a really good move for me because it opened me up to a lot of new experiences and meeting new people. Although I went for kind of the easier friendships, I joined the fraternity. I kind of just fell into it in a way. And it wasn't necessarily as, maybe I wasn't as poignant. I wasn't as concerted with who I was actually hanging out with. So which led to a lot of relationships that were good at the time, but they weren't necessarily anything long-term. And some of the friends I surrounded myself were not necessarily the deepest people. That being said, going abroad, especially going to places where you're confronted with different cultures, different languages, different ideas about life, I mean, you really open yourself up for some stuff that you really never knew about. And it's incredibly unique, the experience. Like for me, I just remember, my first few days abroad, I was working at this hostel in Antwerp, and basically, nobody, you're doing a new job, you're doing things you've never heard of or experienced. I don't know Flemish, and fresh off the boat, you really don't know much. So you just have to really be open for everything. And that first trip abroad, I backpacked for 6-7 months. And that first trip abroad really set my mind just in a whole different space. It just changed the way I think about things, the way that I look at things, the way that I interact with things, the way that I perceive things. And it just was so remarkable how quick the reaction was. I remember coming home maybe a year later, and I had people were like, "Wow, your whole demeanor has just changed over these last months." And it's really true. And it was really coincided with my first trip to Asia, where you're just really challenging everything you know about everything, nonstop. And so for me, it's you just open up. There's those Yes Theory guys. I'm sure you guys have seen that, or maybe you haven't. I don't know. It's a great channel. And their whole thing is to seek discomfort. And it's a really smart motto, because I think through discomfort, you're really able to make your biggest strides as a person, your biggest changes as a person, and your biggest, the biggest changes in your life. It's really quite interesting to see how that happens and how quick those things can change. So for me, I would never go back. There's no way I can go back to the person I was when I was 18, before I had left home, because these 8 years have just absolutely, totally changed me, from how I look to how I talk to how I walk to how I act to how I dress. I mean, it's really a unique experience. And so the people that you meet on the road, these are the people who really expose you to these things, the relationships that you build with these people, whether they're from France or from Italy or from Russia or from Thailand or anywhere in between. It's these people who really leave an imprint on your life, and who really change you forever. There was this amazing Anthony Bourdain quote, with something about how the road leaves scars. And I think scars is a good term, because these are things you can't get rid of. Some people see scars as negative, but a lot of people also see scars as positive, because they're things that we've gone through in life. And for me, the road has scarred me a lot, in a good way. Well, in a bad way, in a good way. But really, it's impacted me in a way that I can never go back from. So if you are interested in the digital nomad life, you have to be aware that this is something that you can probably never come back from. You open up Pandora's box, it's open, and it's really hard to shut it and go back to the sheltered life that you once knew. And so for me, I think that's why I keep moving, keep on having new experiences, and keep on, doing the things I like to do. It's just, I've opened Pandora's box, and it's entrapped me, and it's such a wonderful life. It's so vibrant, and every day I'm learning new things, and it's quite unique. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that. If you guys are watching and you haven't subscribed to the channel or tossed a like to this video, it's always a good thing to do. I would really appreciate it. And we're doing new things from Tales from the Road. We got some Serbia content coming up. Very excited to be in Serbia. And that is what I have to say about that. So get ready for some Balkan stuff. If you liked my Albania content, my Macedonian content, definitely the content for you is coming up. So the next question I want to address is, how do you meet new people? That's a good question. A lot of us, we have our friends from when we were 5 years old, and then we never meet anybody new the rest of our lives. No, obviously kidding. I do have to say you have to learn how to do it because I always talk about Paris. This is the first place I really lived abroad. I moved to Paris in 2017 to study at basically a school for diplomats. And I dropped out of class to work on a business. I had an amazing roommate, one of my best friends in the world. But while he was occupied or while he was with his girlfriend, I was really genuinely alone. And that is the only time in my life I've ever felt lonely. It was because I didn't know how to make friends and meet people in an abroad setting. Also, Paris being a huge city where people speak French, there's a huge international community, but people are living all over the city. You know, it's very anonymous. So it was very challenging to meet people. I also started my first relationship of my life in Paris. And the reason probably that it started was that I was just not in a good place with my social sphere. And I really relied on that person to help me through that, which was both a good way to start a relationship and a really bad way to start a relationship, really reflecting on it. So how do you meet new people? It's a weird question because most of us don't meet a lot of new people that aren't in work. And so, for example, I work from home. This is my office. So there's not a lot of new people, coming in and out of this house. So then you're like, well, where do you start? How do you do it? Do you go to a bar and just talk to random people? Like, do you do that thing? Do you ask random people to hang out? It's a hard question. And I have to say, my number one thing is finding platonic male friends as a male digital nomad that isn't gay is really, really hard. And for me, it's something that I am getting better at, but something that is still super challenging. I really wish there was an app for that. I was talking to this about somebody, how do you, like there's the movie I Love You Man, right? I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's a Paul Rudd and Jason Segel movie about basically Paul Rudd is getting married, but he doesn't have any dude friends. And then he goes on these man dates and is trying to figure out basically how to have dude friends. And for me, I'm a big dude guy. I love drinking beer and hanging out and watching sports and, doing all those things. And so for me, it's hard. I always say it's really easy to meet girls. There's dating apps and all this other stuff. But meeting dude friends, you have to be aggressive. Strike up a nice looking dude and ask him on a man date. Just kidding. That's from the movie, but it is true. And I'm going to get into the ways that I make dude friends and just friends in general. So let's do it. Number one is couch surfing. If you guys haven't heard of couch surfing is an app. The original intent of the app was for basically travelers or nomadic people to find a place to crash for the night. You could message Vladimir in Russia. You could say, hey, Vlad, do you have a bed? He could say, I do. You can come sleep on my couch for a couple nights. No worries. And you don't have to pay. People spend months of their lives couch surfing. I have no idea how you do it. I myself am not nearly that social, nor do I want to be in other people's spaces like that. It's just not the thing for me, to be honest. That being said, couch surfing introduced a really nice feature called Hangouts. This is a way or a place where you can basically see who's close to you. People make profiles, and then from there you can just say, do you want to hang out? And it's a really nice platonic way to meet dudes. It's also a very nice way to meet girls. It's also a nice way to legitimately just meet people. They always have these couch surfing communities and they always have events. So like every Friday here in Serbia, there's a couch surfing event where you can go drink beers with a bunch of, people from around the world. And it's like a meetup, and it's a great thing. It's an awesome thing that exists all around the world. It has a huge community and people are really dedicated to it. For me, I've never hosted anyone, but I've stayed at a few people's houses. That was an interesting experience. I can get into the couch surfing podcast another time. That would actually be kind of funny. But yeah, just in general, it's a good way to meet people. And it kind of is a segue into what I call the friends sphere or the network. So I've studied in Europe. I have lots of European friends from various projects, but I've also traveled a lot in Europe. And what I always do, it sounds like really weird, but if I meet someone, I always connect with them on social media. Maybe not because I necessarily I'm going to see them again anytime soon, but it's always good to have the connection, the networking part of it. So for me, I have a great example. And this guy was in one of my videos. His name's Abdul Rahim, or Apo, the legend. He's from Izmir, Turkey. And I met him in on a couch surfing kind of meetup in Romania. We hung out for like a couple hours. We talked, we shot the shit. The usual kind of stuff that dudes do. He was also with this Erasmus Plus group. So he had some other guys were with us as well. And then, we went our ways, but, I added him on Facebook, good guy. And then, I moved to Turkey like about 9 months ago, and the dude was so helpful, was so friendly, was so happy to be there for me, to help me find a place and then of course, when I got there, we hung out. He introduced me to his friend group. I met some really great people in Izmir through that. And it was actually wonderful. So shout out to Oppo. If you're watching, you probably aren't, but if you are, cheers, man. I really appreciate it. And this is what I really call the friends of friends thing. So now every time I go to any country in the Balkans, I always hit him up along with some Albanian friends, some Greek friends, and see if they have any people in the area that I can hang out with. And lo and behold, they give you the contact, you hit the person up, you meet them, and then maybe they connect you to the next person. So I've met some really good people this way. It's really all about expanding your network and finding other people who can help you be a little bit more comfortable on the road. Super important. And it's hard, but you've just got to be aggressive. I think the biggest thing for meeting people is you have to be aggressive. You have to really get out there and do your thing. All right, James Jones, I'm going to read your thing. Also great name, reminds me of an NBA player back in the day. Thanks for the informative, unique videos. The best part for me is I have to Google the cities to see where you are. Well, thank you, James. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate you for supporting the channel. And yeah, don't just Google, man. Buy a plane ticket and come on out. We'd love to have you. Great. So the next part here is going to events and getting out there. I guess I wrote that earlier. That made a lot more sense back then. So going to events, there's always these open city events, and sometimes wandering to a place by yourself is not ideal. I'm not a big go by yourself kind of person, but sometimes you never know. You meet someone cool, and I think the fact that you're there and you made it and you got your shoes on and you went out and you're trying to do something particularly, unique. It's pretty cool. I mean, that's commendable, and a lot of people don't even make it that far, to be honest. So pat yourself on the back if you're able to do that. And just getting out there is just like, don't stress, don't have anxiety about like what people think of you or whatever. Because the cool part about being a digital nomad and being a nomad in general is that no one knows you. So you can be any version of yourself you want to be. If you are tired of being the guy that everyone gets picked on, or tired of the person that everyone picks on, don't be that person. Try something else. Try a different style. Try a different version of yourself. I think I've gone through some changes over the last 5 years for sure. I even changed my name when I started traveling. I just always wanted to go by a different name, and now I go by Pierce. And I just was like, here it is. No one can question me because no one knows me. And it's kind of refreshing to hit a reset button on who you are every once in a while. I think we get stuck in our ways, and we also like define ourselves by our family relationships and kind of the baggage that comes with that, which I think is good and bad. But sometimes it's nice to just really hit the reset button, meet some new people, and be your own person. So there it is. All right. Now I want to talk about dating apps, because I'm going to do a whole thing about dating while being a digital nomad. But this is another really good way to meet people and to have the ability to have some new experiences. So dating apps, Tinder, Bumble, Badoo, I actually use them all not because I'm super lonely and need a girlfriend, but because there's lots of cool girls out there, and those cool girls also may have cool other friends. So my ideal situation on a dating app, unless I'm really, really gung-ho on going on a date, would be to link up with a really cool girl, and then for her to invite me to a party at her house with her friends, or to invite me out for some sort of random thing with people that she knows, like locals. And it's a great way to interact with locals, because the couch surfing thing doesn't really lead you to a lot of local scenarios, because those people are typically travelers. So I'm giving a good example that just happened to me the other night. I went out with a girl on Friday. We're just chatting. And then the next day she invited me to go on a boat tour of the Danube with her and her friends. And so for me, that was like perfect because my whole goal is to just really connect with people who can help me fill my days in the future in the same city. And for her, she's like, yeah, come along. It'd be great to have you. And for me, it was like, that was an experience I never would have had I not messaged that girl and said like, hey, do you want to like grab a beer? So I think dating apps can be really good. And I've met some really cool girls in a very platonic way. Like some people use these apps, you know, like these hookup apps or one night stand apps. And I think there's a place and a purpose for those kind of interactions. But for me, those are not the interactions I'm particularly looking for. I'm really looking for a cool girl with cool friends who has connections, who I can hang out with and maybe see again in a totally normal way. Like it doesn't need to be like, because I don't get much besides the, you know, the typical pleasure that one does get from spending a night with a beautiful girl. But for me, it's like it's way better if she can connect me to her network. And yeah, I've been on many Tinder outings in a totally platonic fashion, and it's a great thing. It's a great thing. So don't sleep on Tinder while you're traveling. It's a good way to meet local people. So an interesting little thing that I have gotten before and I've heard is, can introverts be digital nomads? And how is that? It's an interesting question because I'm very extroverted. The one thing you can't be is too introverted. And what I mean by that is I think you would be depressingly lonely if you stayed in your house by yourself all the time and if you had social anxiety to go hang out with new people. Not only that, but you would miss on a lot of big positives. Excuse me. You'd miss out on a lot of big positives that you get from traveling. If you really are too afraid to meet up with people, or you're just not really into it, you can do the Michael Jordan thing. You miss all the shots you don't take, right? So for me, being an extrovert and feeling the need to hang out with people, it's like I get great experiences all the time because I just say yes to things. Like you don't have to do that stupid yes man thing. But if you open yourself up to the possibilities and the options of meeting people and being open for those experiences, it's really a cool thing. For me, it's like being an introvert. You know, there's nights where I don't want to hang out with people, and there's nights like tonight I was supposed to meet up with a guy, but I was too tired. I want to do this podcast, and I wanted to do my own thing, and that's okay. You can have days where you want to do your own thing. But that being said, if you are too reluctant to hang out with people, I feel like this lifestyle is not for you. You might spend all your time at your house talking to your friends and basically have had no long-lasting relationships and no long-lasting, I don't know, like deeper connections. And I think that would be a shame. I think there are ways and there are things that introverts can do in the city which may allow them to meet new people. Like, for example, if you really enjoy museums, you may try and find some sort of meeting club situation where you can go to a museum with another person, like quietly in a more comfortable way than you would be used to. One secondary thing that I forgot, but I will mention, is that almost all cities outside of the US, I'm not sure in the US to be honest with you, but there are these Facebook groups that are called expats in, and then it's either the country name or the city name, probably both. And those are groups of foreigners who live there full-time or are living there part-time. And it's a great way to meet people, to introduce yourself to the people who are there, say, hey, I'm in town, love to get a drink, or I'd love to hang out, or would you like to collab on a video with me, blah, blah, blah. I'm always pretty active on the expat pages. I post my videos to the expat pages, and I think it's a really good way to kind of establish yourself, to kind of establish yourself within the community. You can always find events there as well. Facebook is great for events, and so if you're not really aware of what's going on in the city, or you're new, or all of these other things, definitely hop on one of those pages, because you'll be able to increase your access and meet really cool people who are like-minded and who are also foreigners. So they often know what you're going through. So for me, like I got quite sick in Kyrgyzstan and in Mexico. So those expat groups were really great because I could ask pictures, and then of course, I could ask questions. And of course, for travel restrictions, it's good. You say, hey, for example, I wanted to go to Bosnia, and the word on the street is that you need a PCR test to go to Bosnia. So now I'm not going to Bosnia, but you need people who you can trust, who you can ask, and who are really like in the know. The biggest and the baddest one, of course, is in Saigon, where they have like an expat community of 125,000 people on this Facebook page. And no lies, it is the most toxic place I have ever been on the internet. The people on there are just awful. This is a shout out to expat people. I don't know what's wrong with you guys sometimes, but being online, you guys are vicious. It's a very vicious thing. For me, it's like being an expat. It's like, I just want to help people and I want to make sure people feel good about asking questions. But like people on the expat pages are brutal trolls and it's a huge problem. So I'm making you guys aware of that for sure. But yeah, be better, guys. Like just be better. It's like, what are you doing? It's a very frustrating world out there with the internet trolls, with the people who are just out there to talk trash and just out there to be mean on the internet. So with my videos, I get a lot of trash talk, which is fair. You know, I'm talking about political stuff sometimes, and I have my own leanings and I have my own understanding of history, and that is okay. But if you're like, hey, where can I get a PCR test? And they're like, you should look it up in a book, you idiot. You're like, okay, dope. I'm so glad I joined this group. So we have 7 people online. That's great news. Thank you guys for being on the podcast. We're talking about, of course, how to make friends abroad and just how to have a social life abroad. I've covered, you know, what it's like to be lonely, what it's like to be homesick, good ways to meet people. If you guys are interested, you can always, watch the whole length video of this. And of course, please put some things in the comments. If you're enjoying the content, say hi. I don't bite, and I'm super happy to answer any questions you guys may have. All right, transitioning into our next 2 things, which are the worst parts of my lifestyle and the best parts of my lifestyle with regards to people. So I'll just start with the bad news because you got to get the bad news out of the way. For me, the worst part of having this social life is meeting new people all the time. That sounds like a really weird thing, and it sounds very counterintuitive to what I had said before. But man, oh man, have I had the same conversations with different people about 90 million times. Sometimes I feel that if I tell someone I'm from New Mexico again, or that Mexico and New Mexico are not the same state, or that I come from the city where Breaking Bad was filmed, I feel like my head is going to explode. And sometimes I just tell people I'm from different places if I know I'm not going to see them again, or just to be funny. Sometimes I'll even put a fake French accent on. I can do a very impressive one, to be honest. If you guys are aware of the French accent, I've got a good one. And I just tell people just random stuff because people asking you where you're from all the time, people asking you the same 19 or 20 introductory questions is exhausting. And for me, it's like you miss a lot of the depth that you would have with people that you know, and you miss a lot of the kind of like, the deeper feeling. So while the people are really cool abroad and I love being abroad and I love all the people I meet generally, you do have a lack of depth and you do talk about surface level stuff maybe more than you should, which even makes me maybe rely even more heavily on my family and friends, which is probably a bad thing, to be honest. I think with regards to that part of the social life, it's, sometimes you just have to be open. You have to find people who you can really connect with. And so, if you want to just say, look, I don't really care where you're from. I just would rather just chat about like space today. Like maybe it might be a little rude, but I think they understand where you're coming from, at least in the short term. So for me, I think that's probably the worst part. And then the second part is the isolation. So let's say, like, for example, the first few weeks I was here in Belgrade, I was just struggling to meet people. My dating app way wasn't working. My couch surfing thing wasn't really working. And I was just having trouble like having people actually follow through and meet me. So that's also tough because when you're struggling to meet anybody, the city can feel very isolating and you can feel very bad about yourself, obviously in a negative way. So I think that's the reality of being away from your friends and family. You're going to get isolated. You're going to get lonely. And the question is, are you going to wallow in it or are you going to push through it? So I always vote don't wallow, push through. Other negative things about the lifestyle, at least with regards to social life, is just having people you can rely on if you need help may not always be there, especially if you do get sick. So I got quite sick in Mexico and I got quite sick in Kyrgyzstan. In Mexico, I was really a lone wolf. That was really not good. I was so sick that I almost couldn't move. And I was staying in an Airbnb, but the lady wasn't necessarily there. And there was really not a lot of help, to be honest. I had to get myself to the hospital in one piece. That was a mess. Secondarily, I got sick in Kyrgyzstan, but same illness, different time. It's been quite the year. But yeah, in Kyrgyzstan, luckily the people who I was staying at the Airbnb, they were such a lovely family, and they were very happy to help and make sure that I was feeling comfortable. And they took me. The owner of the apartment's wife, she actually just took me to the hospital and bribed a doctor. I would love to get into these hilarious travel stories. Might write a book. I'd write a book at some point, because I've got some really good ones. But yeah, it's tough, and it can be isolating, and it can really suck. So now my network's getting bigger, and I know when I'm in Europe, I'm only about an hour flight away from somebody who can help, or a phone call away from somebody who can come. Really, if I really needed someone to come, I'm sure they could. But when you're in the jungles of Mexico, it's not the easiest place. And when you're not really connected, you can't meet other people. Very challenging. And let's get to the best parts of this social life situation. So, meeting new people. Honestly, people are awesome. Super underrated. So many nice people. And the majority of people you meet are great. There's very few people. I had a horrible experience here in Serbia. I went out with this guy. It's just not a good time. Maybe I can tell you guys the story later. But yeah, most people are great. Most people are very generous. People in the Balkans, for example, I've been here, about like 3 months of the last year. People here are so generous and so nice. They will never let me pay for anything. They always wanted me to have such a good experience. Almost all the people on this trip, this like almost a year abroad, have just been phenomenal people, just good guys, and people that I would love to see again, guys and girls, old and young, just really nice people. And when you're around new people and you have the ability to see how people live, you just learn a lot about yourself, right? Like, you really learn how good you had it when you meet someone from Cambodia who didn't have much, or you really feel really so connected when you meet a guy in Katakal, Pakistan that didn't have internet until he was 17 years old. You're like, how is that possible? I mean, it's really crazy, and it's really eye-opening. So the people that you meet shape your experience while you're abroad, of course, but they really leave those scars that I was talking about earlier, that big impact that you can feel in your life for a long time, which is phenomenal. It's a really phenomenal thing. The second part is I wrote new people, new life. New life. What does that mean? The thing is, I feel like we all have baggage, and that's okay. I think it's okay to have baggage. We all have ridiculous family stories. We all have these things that have been very negative. But the cool part about living abroad is you can totally shake free from the shackles of who you are. If those shackles are holding you down or keeping you from being less of the person that you could be or the person that you wanted to be. So for me, I didn't have any particularly super negative experiences from my youth and stuff, but I always thought I just thought I could be someone different, and I could just try my own thing, and I could just change circumstances that I particularly had in my life. And now that I'm completely autonomous, it's just wild. I mean, the amount of freedom that I experience, the amount of different experiences that I grant myself through this lifestyle, it's awesome. I'm so open to everything now, and I'm so open to trying new things, and I'm so open to meeting new people, and I'm so open to just being a different, just learning different things, being a different person than who I was. And there's nothing wrong with the person who I was, but there's only growth that you can put on top of that. So in a way, this lifestyle makes you grow bigger. Hopefully not, because there is good food on the road as well, but it makes you grow bigger than you ever thought you could be. And it expands your mind to a place that you didn't really think it could, because if you don't travel, you're not consuming new information normally. At least on a, maybe you read books or stuff, but on a cultural ground level, you're not really expanding your mind that often. And so for me, it's everywhere I go, I'm challenging myself. I'm reading Cyrillic. I'm reading Vietnamese. I'm learning Turkish. I'm seeing how people cut fish in a different way, how people take out trash. Sometimes there was a Balkan band on my street, a gypsy band. I don't know, you just don't see this stuff other places. And You get kind of used to it because every place has its own unique thing, but the last thing your brain does is sleep on you. And I think that's really the important part. So let's see, are there any more chat things I can answer here? I don't know. Do you guys have any questions? If you guys have any questions, please hit me up in the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, or just say hi. I'm going to get into the last little part of this right now. So yeah, the last part is what I'll just say is you never know. This lifestyle is crazy. This lifestyle is, it hurts you. It breaks you down. It challenges you. It makes you sick. But it also opens you up for everything. And it makes you so much more, I think, fulfilled in the long run. And so I always say, you never know. You never know what it's going to be. And I think that's kind of I have a guy watching from Nairobi. Nice. I wish I knew something in Swahili, but I don't. Jumbo, that's Swahili, I think. So yeah, so you really do never know. And I think that's what just makes the whole thing so interesting, is like every day is a new adventure. And every time you wake up, you're going to have something new in your life that you didn't have yesterday. And that makes you a richer and more wholesome person, at least in my opinion. So if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel yet, this is a good time to subscribe, or toss me a like, or like the video. I'm really trying my best to, not only just be a travel vlogger, because I don't think I am a travel vlogger sometimes. I'm really trying to show you guys what the world is like from an educational standpoint, and also like why this world is so worth exploring. And so if you guys find that interesting, please toss me a sub. All right, Philip Nyalenda, great name. How do you socialize in countries where a majority only speak local language and you can't speak it? Ooh, that's a good question. So being a native English speaker, it's like a life hack. So most people in most countries speak some form of English. The only time where I was really linguistically in trouble was in Asia and in Asia. So Central Asia, like Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan, when you get outside of the cities, and you talk to people over 30. But I do speak some Russian, so that was a bit helpful. Or when I was in Vietnam, in Southeast Asia, Thailand, and you get out of the cities, those people, when you're around people who know like zero, like a hard zero of English. So for me, I think the best way to counteract this is to pick up a little bit of the local language, just a little bit, like nothing conversational, so that you can make the people feel more comfortable around you. Learn some food words so that you can function, like chicken or rice, or like really, really some basic stuff that really will help you out. And then secondarily, or third, is just use the power of the smile. So I understand if you're, to be honest, I'm not sure how these people who go to the center of some countries where people really speak none of the language that you know, and they live in huts and they like live in that sort of way, especially people who do Peace Corps and things like that. I'm not sure how they do it, to be honest. I would get really lonely. But I think at that point, if you're really committed to living that kind of a lifestyle, then maybe you should learn some of the local language. But I really think if you're going to travel, you should learn some languages, like at least some basic stuff. So like here in Serbia, I don't know any Serbian, but I can read a menu in Serbian. I can read the words in Serbian. I know how to say thank you and cheers and good morning, good evening, just by listening. I've never practiced any Serbian. No one's ever taught me Serbian. So those things you pick up. And I don't know. It's you just got to open yourself up. But don't underestimate the power of a smile, because people will typically give you a pass if you just look friendly. And to be honest, when I was in Uzbekistan, I'll tell you a little story, and then I'll wrap this up, is I've never been to a country where people so often asked me to eat with them while I didn't speak Uzbek or Russian very well. And so these guys, I just remember sitting in Samarkand. I was in Bukhara, and I was in a little cafe. I was looking for a restaurant to eat at. And these guys, they looked at me. They're like, brat, brother, come here. So I come sit down. They speak bad Russian. I speak atrocious Russian. and they're trying to share their chicken with me. They're trying to teach me things. They were trying to get me to take shots of vodka with them. And this is just a really common experience you actually have in lots of countries. And, it might be uncomfortable. You might not be able to talk to them, but you can share something with them. You can cheers. You can look them in the eye. You can say thank you to the best of your ability. And sometimes that is more than enough to have an amazing cultural experience. So that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. I hope you guys found this interesting. Putting out some new stuff about Serbia coming out next week. We just were in a town called Smederevo, which is a beautiful little Danube city. And we went to a place called Zemun, which is basically a new suburb, an older city that used to be a different part of Belgrade, built in the Austro-Hungarian style. And we get into a little Yugoslav stuff too. So if you're interested in all that, definitely stay tuned. I'm going to keep doing these podcasts. Hope you guys enjoy them. I enjoy making them. I really need to do them with more regularity. So feel free to let me know what you think in the chat. If you guys have any more questions, now is the time. I'm happy to answer it. But if not, thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends about Tales from the Road. I'm really trying to educate people about the world. Really trying to, do what Anthony Bourdain did for me for future generations. I don't want to be the travel vlogger who looks at stuff and says, hey, look at that. I don't know about it, but it looks cool. I'm trying to give you guys some substance, and I'm really trying to show you how the digital nomad lifestyle is something that's amazing, unique, incredible, and something that has changed my life, and I hope will change yours. So if there's no more questions, guys, then I will sign off. Thank you guys for watching. Živeli, that's cheers from Serbia. And we will catch you on the next podcast. Cheers, guys. Have a good one.